Hey, everybody, it's your friend James Shaw. Thank you so much for choosing to hang out with us today as we do what we do, which is talk to elite people who are doing elite things. And today is no exception to that. Susan, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for choosing to be with us. We're going to talk about how you built a massive business through your farming campaign. You've gone old school, but it's working. And we're going to lay it out for people so they can understand how to do it too, because I think what you're doing is special. But before we get into it, would you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and where you are and a little bit about your business.
Sure. So, again, my name is Susan Lombardo. I'm in the North Atlanta market for about 20 years. I relocated here through Hurricane Katrina, originally from the New Orleans area. So, I kind of started from scratch in this area. And I'm in the north side, basically the suburbs, north side suburbs of Atlanta.
And you have a successful business, and yet you had to build it from scratch. So, relocating due to Katrina is a big deal, and yet you needed to build a business. So, tell us, why did you pick farming as a strategy to do that?
So I was here in my previous profession for about 10 years before I entered the real estate space. And it was like many agents, not raised here, not from here, huge metropolitan area, just a massive amount of agents. You definitely need to figure out how to stand out to build any kind of market share or presence in it. So when I was a new agent, I got licensed in July of 2015. So 2016 was my first full production year. I had spent the last half of the year figuring out and meeting with different agents who some were doing farming, repeat, refer, sphere based businesses. Some had internet lead based, cold calling, robo dialers, the whole gambit of how agents can build successful businesses. And I quickly realized all of those pathways are um, success based businesses. And I was kind of in that moment we all get into as new agents where you kind of chasing squirrels because you're bombarded with so many different pathways of how to grow a business that I decided to just singularly focus on which one felt like the most natural progression of what I call staying in my lane, like my natural skill sets, what agents I admired, and I started kind of shadowing them. And instead of trying to do all 6 or 7 different pathways to an okay level, I decided that farming really spoke to me. And I went all in with that starting in month 4 of brand new agent, and then haven't missed a month since in that primary farm, which is
And it's
now
paid off, Susan. I don't want to anybody miss this because it's paid off. You did 40 million in business last year as a solo agent with the TC. I mean, we're
yes,
not dabbling in the business here. This is working at a high level.
yes. And it is definitely, I think, attributed from the beginning. I think 2 major things stood out. Since I came from 2 decades of a corporate background, from day one, I have treated this business like a business and I showed up with a schedule. And the second thing that I did is I understood marketing. I have my college minor is marketing. And I understood at a fundamental level that you're all in and you have to do it with consistency or don't do it at all. And even as a brand new agent, I saw many agents, if they had a $3,500 budget, they would blast a whole bunch of houses in one time and expect immediate results instead of taking a smaller farm and have consistency over time because that's where the yield is. It is a very giving model. For in my primary farm, I get about 40 to 46x on what I spend versus what comes back to me. So it's a massive, massive margin. And I have on the last 3 to 4 years kind of been at the easy button part of it because I've just layered the systems and kind of perfected one and then added a little more to it over time. And that unrelenting pursuit of consistency just pays big, big dividends when you stick to it.
There's no doubt about it. And you've built a great system. So we're going to unpack some of that today. We're going to talk a little bit about how you pick a farm because you were purposeful in that. And then
Yes.
next, some of the steps to keep in touch. And I love that you said that bottom line is about consistency and showing up. You've done that, every day since 2018. And it's taken until, it was 2021 before you really felt like you're in a flow. So this is while you can get results quickly, it is a long-term strategy if you're willing to do the work. So let's talk about, you've got multiple farms, but talk about kind of how you picked that first one and some of the data you looked at, because it's not just like, oh, I'd like to do that. Like you were purposeful in the neighborhood that you chose.
Yes. So the one things I kind of affectionately call myself a numbers nerd. The one thing I really like about anything farming related or any pathway to building a successful real estate business is if you know the numbers of what the conversions are supposed to look like, it's much easier to stay on the path and know about when the return should come. So what I did very early on is my first primary farm, to answer your question directly, was truly what most new agents search for, and that is to be dominant right where I live, where I already had some presence, had connections, a sphere of influence. So I didn't start from total scratch on that. But it's also in some ways a little harder because they also knew I was brand new, because before that I was in insurance business. So I was known for that when people needed assistance for those kind of things. So what I did is I looked in the farm. It is 498 homes in it. I went back, and I do this to this day the same exact way. Go back 2 years to see what is the average turnover rate in a neighborhood. For me, I want at least a farm of 350 to 500 homes as a minimum for those numbers to work, where I have zero fear or concern of what the output's going to be because I know the dividend will come back. I want to then check to see if there's already a dominant agent in that market, because it is harder to compete against a dominant. And I had 2 of them in my farm when I started. So, truthfully, I wouldn't have picked that farm if I didn't live in it for that reason. There is hundreds and hundreds, not thousands, of other neighborhoods that no one is dominant in. Much, much easier to get traction there than to compete with someone who's already had some success in it. But I got my first hits, if you will. My first appointment started showing up about 4 months into the farm. The 2 dominants in there had about 28 to maybe 30% market share, maybe not quite that much combined. And at the end of my first year, I had 18% market share that jumped to 28% within the next year, and then ramped up again to like 38%. Then the next year was in the mid 40%. And where I've been sitting for the last 3 years is about 55 to 65% consistently. So it's a very predictable farm.
We'll take it all day to watch it grow over that time. But I love your perspective is that you might look at it and an agent may have 12 or 15 or whatever percent market share, but there's still a significant amount up for grabs. And if you run your play, you can go earn some. So let's talk about your play, because it's a combination of being in their mailbox, but also being involved in the community and just being a connector. So postcards are a big part of it, you told me. Let's walk through what you do there. And then for our Inspire Collective members, we have some examples of what Susan's doing that you can download inside the Inspire portal. But tell us about your postcard process and just how you stay engaged in the farm.
So what I first did, and I do attribute it to giving me really strong traction from the beginning, because of course, if you're a brand new agent, I didn't have just sold, just listed, coming soon. I had nothing to market like that. I had not sold a single house at that point. So what I did is coming from, I was a homeowner's adjuster, large loss unit. So I had a massive amount of vendors that I had used over the years. And then I filled in the blanks for like you need your driveway pressure wash, you need windows replaced, you need a painter, you need kitchen remodel, any possible thing that was home related. I intentionally assembled a list from the beginning so that on social media, anytime someone needed anything at all, home related, I became top of mind, like a resource for it. So not just that one time when they're thinking of selling, but every time when they're thinking about doing anything to their house, I became top of mind. And to your point, initially, there was about 25% taken in market share. The other 75% was all one-off deals with other agents. So when I ran the math, there would be 20 on the low side, 35 to 40 homes on the high side that consistently sold in that original farm. So I knew exactly how much GCI was going to be spent in the neighborhood with or without my presence in it. Mm-hmm. Statistically, that's going out the door because as far back as I would go, it was obvious that it was.
Yeah.
So it wasn't if those people were going to sell. The data says they are going to sell. So it's just how do I get in front of them first?
All right. So you did your postcards, which focused, because like you say, you didn't have a bunch of sales. You focused on service and adding value to the community through whatever vendors they might need. I imagine at some point you transition. So if I'm in your farm right now, what am I going to get from you on a regular basis? What's showing up in my inbox every month?
Yeah. So the rhythm that I followed was your very traditional postcards. We all have templated access to the MOFers, if you will, the postcards that will cause somebody to call you, the market analysis, those kind of things. And then
and by the way, does that place still work though? Are you interested in the value of your home or curious about what's happening? Like that still works, right?
It does.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it works a little better now because every single one of us, especially if you're in any kind of professional career, we're buried alive in email and we time block, we delete hundreds of emails without ever reading them. So I think it becomes harder and harder to be first of mind if you over deliver to people in an electronic format because we don't read them. We unsubscribe to people we even like because we just don't want it in our inbox. So the anchor was two very traditional, nothing exceptional, which is the key, very traditional postcards that all of us have access to through any software that is templated for that purpose. It was the quarterly one that anchored every single quarter without fail. I did the actives, under contract, solds, days on market. And then at end of year, at the end of the whole year, I would do a year over year analysis. Is there a market up? Is it down? Average days on market, percent of list price to close, all the things that we do. Again, the key is we all do those things. We just don't do those things with regimented consistency where it is always coming and they know to expect it. That's the key. I have showed up for listing appointments 2 to 3 years later before I really understood how impactful that consistency is. They would have a little gift bag full of postcards that a bunch of agents sent, and they would spread mine out and tell me why they kept mine.
Wow. So you are providing people with updates on what's going on. You're asking if they need information, and it sounds like maybe the content is not as important as the consistency in being there. That you're going to figure out what you want to send, and just be there, and it pays off. But then the next part is you're not just a mailbox agent, where you're showing up in their mailbox once a month. You are actively engaged in the community, and that's another way to be engaged in the farm is to piggyback on stuff that's going on. I imagine that you being involved in the community is a big piece of this too. Give us some examples of how you're involved in addition to showing up in their mailbox.
Yes, so that was the beginnings. That is still the foundation today. But about in year 3, I would say, I started layering if there was like a fall festival already happening in the community. I donated a pumpkin patch. If they had a tennis clinic for the kids in the neighborhood in the summer, I donated the pizza or the sandwiches and the water. Whatever was already being done, I volunteered capital and injected it into the event to make a good event great. That's kind of been the model. Not that I'm going to come in and run it, take it over from anybody, interrupt their systems. I just want to make what they're doing better. And I was a reliable source of funding for that. And of course, in exchange, there was marketing. And that is when it took a life of its own, when other people started marketing me in these events. And then it progressed to I made some events, like we do a 5K Earn Your Turkey Trot, is an example. Thanksgiving morning, it's now 3, sometimes 4 generations deep that come and do a 5K in the neighborhood with their family on Thanksgiving Day. It's grown every single year. I have like a snack station and I have a mimosa stand that has become a neighborhood favorite. They call it the in-law table to prepare for the day. So it kind of has some fun like that. We have dog days of summer. At the last day of our pool, all the dogs in the neighborhood can come before the pool shut down, little dog treats, stuff like that. Literally little things, not even massively expensive things that I do. And then the really took it over the top was Food Truck Fridays. There was a social committee in the neighborhood that was trying to get that started off through the summer. And if the weather looked sketchy, high school football games, that kind of stuff, where they thought attendance would be low, the events kept getting canceled because they would have to guarantee the truck minimums to have the event. So if not enough people showed up, they couldn't have the event. So I reached out to the social committee person who was doing all of that. And I said, what would it look like if I guaranteed the minimum so that you could have the event no matter what? So I had no idea going into it. Am I going to be paying nothing? Am I going to be paying a couple of $100, $1,000? But I thought, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to be the anchor. And I got advertised massively. And I've only had to pay in probably 40 or 50 events, 2, maybe 3 times. And it was less than $200 each time to make a gap up for the minimum. And in return, it was 8 to 15 marketing pieces done by other people promoting me. Yeah. And that's where the magic happens. When other 100%. People say things about you, you're going to get some quick traction. Yeah. And I always make it about the community, not about me. Mm-hmm. Always come from service. There is very subtle signage, but I don't show up dripping in my logo. Right. I show up in community with these people.
But you're a neighbor. And I think that's the key, is you're showing up as a neighbor who happens to be in the real estate business. Yes. And you care passionately about your community. I've heard Gary talk about this from stage, and you're proving it. You can build a massively successful business in a really tiny area if you just go all in on helping the people in that area. And that's what you've done. And you've given us the model. Be in their mailbox every month, which you are. We're not going to get into it a bunch, but you do a newspaper ad for one of your neighborhoods. You're showing up and asking, all you're asking is, how can I help? What can I do to help you? And like in this one, it's just, well, would you be willing to guarantee the gap on the food truck? Sure. Now you're a sponsor of this event and you're visible in it, but you've paid a couple $100 a couple of times. I mean, it's really smart. I love how you're looking at it, and it's paying off. But I'm sure you've learned some lessons along the way too, and maybe made some mistakes. What do you want those who are listening and watching to learn from you? What mistakes have you made that you don't want them to make too?
I'll give the nugget of inspiration that if I can do what I did solo, and I'm, like rolling into the 4th year of that level of production consistently. I started off, my first farming was horrific. It was a postcard that did not match my style. It had a little scarecrow. It had Happy fall, y'all, with some kind of apple fritter recipe on the back. And when it came to my mailbox, I thought, why in the world did I send this out? I don't want to be top of mind if they want to make apple fritters. I want to be top of mind when they want to sell their house. So keep in mind what message you want to send and build consistency in what you send to them. I do send recipes here and there. I do send SEC football schedules, wine tour schedules, things like that. But I send those to past clients in my sphere. That's not like the basis of the farming. So think about the end, what you're trying to accomplish, and send things of value that they find valuable, things that they would want to keep. Like a good example, hey, I just redid windows in my home. I researched window vendors. Here are 3 that I searched that had great service, great pricing. This is the one that I used. That kind of thing, they save that because everybody is going to need to replace those windows eventually. Yep. So constantly be of service, solve problems that they have now, and have the ready resource for the problems that they're going to have that you've already placed that in their hands. And you won't know it immediately, but you will a few years down the line when they're finally ready to sell, how overwhelming it is, how much of your marketing they kept because you've trained them that you're the resource for all those things.
Well, I often say that just because we don't hear them doesn't mean they don't hear us, and you're proving that. They're paying attention. How can people find you if they want to connect with you on social media or send a referral your way? What's the best way to connect with you?
So I do have a social media page. It's lombardohomegroup.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I'm more active on Facebook, but I'm on all those platforms. And of course, just personally, just send it to my personal account. It is helpful if you send me a direct message as well, because I do get a lot of those and I will reject if I have no recognition. Just full disclosure. Try to keep the personal, but if it's somebody that's connected with me through a platform like this, I'm happy to share, and then you can see the stuff because I post a lot of it.
Yeah, well, you're awesome. Susan, congratulations on your success. Thank you for sharing your systems and strategies with us. Inspire members, we have a playbook and some examples of our marketing stuff inside the portal that you can download. Everybody, thank you for watching. Susan, congratulations.
Thank you. Bye.